So to get back into it, I doing a lot of research on you. You're kind of like an action movie star that does their own stunts, because I read this excerpt about how you were in combat and you pretty much launched yourself with a rocket launcher. And I have a feeling that led you pretty deep into your yoga journey, or had something to do with your yoga journey. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
It definitely had a lot to do with my back problems. But it's what we like to refer to as an accident, because it's not supposed to happen. And it was my failure. But when you're being shot at, certain things just kind of like become a level of importance on your prefrontal cortex. And so I instinctively shot a rocket, and there's a wall behind me. And if anyone here is a veteran or has ever shot a rocket, listening to this conversation, they'll know that you need about 100 meters of free space behind you, when you do that. And there is about 5 feet. So it took me and threw me forward. There's a canal. In Afghanistan, there's lots of man-made canals. They're like little rivers, they use to flood the farm fields. So, and this one in particular was pretty deep. I don't know, like 6 feet deep, and just landed into it. Came to, and there was just smoke and dust everywhere, and I was like, "Oh, that was not good." Luckily, everybody was safe, and I got the bad guy.
Yeah. Okay.
And scared the other one off, I think. So, it was pretty much all clear after you shoot a rocket at a bad guy. So
okay, kind of like real life Call of Duty to a degree.
I mean, I laugh, when I talk to people about Call of Duty, and they're usually younger, and I'm like, all the stuff you do in that game, I've pretty much done in real life.
So my next question is, I really like this quote when I was reading your blog. It says, pain is not weakness leaving the body, but ignorance being masked by pride. So what exactly does that mean to you? And how do you think that parallels to where the state of just men's health is right now? Absolutely.
So recently I read a book called The Will to Change, and it was all about this patriarchal masculinity aspect of our society. And I realized that I fit into that bubble pretty heftily. Even as a yogi, for some reason, I still have this, masculinity aspect. I can't just, I don't know, if someone calls me weak, I just, goes right into Marine Corps mode. And, here I am trying to be competitive to win. And, and so I honor that little piece of just how I was raised in the way that our entire society and culture is. And now as a yogi, trying to approach everything with as much, I guess, compassion as I can is a good word to use, because, it doesn't necessarily have to be gentle or slow, but definitely when you're doing something to your body, you should be listening to it. And in that article, I was writing all about unmeasurable punishment that I've just put myself through my entire life. And I feel those moments, and they actually have inbred memories of the moments where scars, and I'm sure everyone can, right? You can look back and look at your scars and have that painful memory of, why didn't I just listen? And yet still we continue to push ourselves beyond that point. And we call it being tough or building mental resiliency or any of that nonsense. I mean, this morning I was, taking a 10-pound sledgehammer and beating a concrete block with it, but I did so with control and compassion, so I didn't hurt myself as I was breaking things up to be recycled. So there's there's ways to move. And if I would have known how to like hold myself and move properly, that, all this yoga that I've done, all the training, the anatomy that we look at and how our bodies are supposed to move and function, when we really understand that, we can do even greater things and not, damage our bodies as we go along. We can constantly keep them healthy and able to withstand more. It's just, think of it, it's kind of like the domino effect, right? So if you knock down a chain of dominoes and you keep knocking them down the whole way, by the end of it, everything is going to be a disaster and all knocked down. Yet if we would just constantly, every time we accidentally knock a domino down, we pick it up and then we'll move and do something else and we'll knock that one over, but we'll pick it up instead of constantly just wiping it all out. We can mitigate each individual injury and bad thing we do to ourselves, and hopefully that prevents more injury in the future. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Stephen and I talk a lot about a lot of the issues men face in men's health are preventable. Getting regular checkups, eating right, diet, exercise, all the stuff that you usually hear. And your analogy to the domino effect is perfect because, we've heard people say, oh, my testicle hurt today. And it's like, it's not supposed to hurt.
Yeah.
Go get that checked out. And it's not supposed to hurt. And so when you hear that, it's really kind of sad that someone is willing to just let their testicle hurt. And as someone who has testicles, I do too. When they hurt, it freaking hurts.
Yeah. I mean, if you knew what it was, you'd go get checked out. Like again, this is our pride, sometimes is our own ignorance, because, we feel something and we're like, oh, that's nothing. And, shrug it off. Next thing you know, we needed a stent in our heart, and we weren't listening to anybody or anything that our body was trying to tell us. Again, we have to just hear what the body is saying so we can give it what it needs in that moment.
Right.
And sometimes it's just, you eat something bad and you feel bad. I mean, you don't eat that same thing again. We got to start approaching everything in our life like we do in that regard.
Yeah. I think that the practice of yoga has really kind of opened my eyes to a lot of self-awareness and just understanding, hey, this doesn't feel right. I played college baseball and I have some lingering injuries.
Yeah.
And coming to yoga has helped alleviate that and increase my range of motion and things like that. And has also just made me self-aware that if I'm not feeling well, I'm going to go to the doctor and I'm going to go ask for help. Or if I'm not feeling right mentally, I'm going to go talk to someone. And I think that a lot of guys kind of ignore these things. And I just, from your perspective, this guy is a warrior, the toughest of the tough, and he's willing to listen to his body and get help and be aware, right? Am I hoping I'm not putting words in your mouth with that?
Toughness is being able to put aside the fear of judgment because of this fake idea in your mind that you're going to be weak, because you go to the doctor or you take care of yourself and do things that are healthy for you. We have such a fear that our friends are going to make fun of us. Who cares? Like, if they're just making fun, they're going to make fun regardless,
right?
Whether you do it or you don't do it. So you might as well do it because it's going to help you out in the long run. And you're going to feel good. And then you can laugh at them, and say, hey, man, if you would do this, you wouldn't be over there grabbing your back and, walking around in so much pain. And then before you know it, all the bad things that initially started the conversation and provoked the judgments and the making fun of, no, you're no longer even in that setting,
Yeah. So I want to get back to the post-traumatic stress a little bit.
Sure.
And talk about how you've used yoga to help you understand and maybe the right word is deal with those kind of feelings?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about what it is and how it feels, and kind of the lack of control that you may have in the situation. But there's a good way to manage it, and you could. I've seen people start journals to keep track. I just started noticing my stressors, like what would stress me out, and if I could manage all the stress in my life pretty well, then chances of me being triggered, if you will, and sent into some post-traumatic stress moment where I'm not in control was very limited. So it all became about how can I be more resilient to the moment, and then if I can be resilient in the moment, then with my depth work, my meditation, and digging into some of the philosophy to understand what everyone's gone through before me. I mean, sometimes it's just we talk about knowledge is power, but really, like, our fears and all of the fear of judgment and everything is like a dark cave that we don't know what it's going to look like, so we don't even approach it. But if we read a book about somebody who'd gone through it before, then now all of a sudden we have a torch, and now we can walk through this fear, knowing that we can see what it actually is, and there is nothing really even to be afraid of. But when it gets to maybe that point where it's too much, we can put a pin in it and come back to it another time. We don't always have to go completely down that rabbit hole to a past memory. We can just venture in whenever we have the energy to do so.
Okay. And so to kind of build off that, how would you say that a lot of people use yoga to maybe make their butt a little tighter or make the abs look a little nicer, but isn't there a really important part to yoga with the breath and breathing and controlling the emotional end as well, and also using that to fit into discomfort? How would you say that would help?
I mean, it comes naturally, right? Like the breath is just so natural for us, and anyone that's watching this that's a veteran, the first thing that we know how to do in our training is breathe, because to be able to shoot a firearm and hit your target successfully, you have to have breath management. So you have to control your breath so specifically that whenever your finger squeezes a trigger, you're on the exhale and your body's in complete state of stillness to hit your target. And when we go from being in the military and we leave, and then we're not constantly doing that breath work, that could play a big role in why some of these things develop in our lives, these different mental anguishes.
It's a really interesting parallel.
But it also could be the reason why we're able to do what we did over there and maintain clarity and focus and determination, is that we had this constant control of our own nervous system. We were using our breath so much, so focused in on breathing, that's how we were able to push through all the pain and all the things that we saw, dealt with, experienced in such hardship. And you don't have a choice. It's either you control your breath and you control your stuff, or you're going to die or get somebody else killed. So when it all comes down to, are you going to live or are you going to die, or are you going to cause someone to die or live? When it's that, your brain completely shifts into a whole another level of endorphin releasing. I mean, there's some people that have never been in combat that experience it, and you just go into a zone. It's a different reality.
Wow.
than obviously us sitting here today. And it's happening while we sit here.